My name is Clara, and I'm 25 years old. If you ask anyone in my family, they'll tell you I've always been the sensitive one. The quiet girl. The one who never caused trouble. The one who made the best out of hand-me-downs and awkward silences. The one who smiled at chaos and swallowed disappointment like it was medicine. But nothing could have prepared me for the moment my mother looked me straight in the eye and said, "We all agreed you're not welcome at the wedding." I felt the floor vanish beneath me. And I swear I didn't even flinch. Let me backtrack. Because stories like this don't start with rejection. They start with belonging, or at least the illusion of it. I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, a place where everyone knew everything about everyone else. We lived in a cream-colored house at the edge of the woods, and from the outside, our family looked normal. 2 parents, 3 kids, a golden retriever. Sunday brunches, soccer practice, 4th of July barbecues. But on the inside, we were a snow globe someone had shaken too hard and then left on a shelf to settle. And nothing ever quite did. My sister Heather is 2 years older than me. She's the golden child. Blonde hair like a shampoo commercial, perfect skin, loud laugh, and even louder opinions. People gravitated toward her like moths to light. And honestly, I used to be one of them. My younger brother, Ethan, is 6 years younger. Still trying to figure himself out, but always had a good heart. Always neutral. And then there was me. The middle girl with potential. That word followed me like a shadow. Potential to go far. Potential to write a book. Potential to make something of myself. Potential to be someone important, someday. Someday never seemed to come. It all really started unraveling when Heather announced her engagement to Tyler, the man she had dated for almost 5 years. We all kind of expected it. Tyler was clean-cut, came from money, had a decent job in marketing, and more importantly, he adored Heather. Their proposal was this over-the-top thing at the coast. Heather posted it all over Instagram. Rose petals, professional photos, a live musician. Meanwhile, I liked the post and got no reply. No thank you. No heart emoji. Nothing. But that was typical Heather. She assumed you'd always be there, clapping from the sidelines, no matter how invisible she made you feel. Still I showed up. Smiled. I helped her pick flowers and font options and RSVP cards. I gave her my Saturdays, my car, even loaned her my pearl earrings for her bridal shower. She said nothing about them. One afternoon, a few weeks before the wedding, I came home early from work. I had this weird urge to talk to Mom. You know those moments when something in your gut just says go? She was in the kitchen, sipping wine from a stemless glass. I walked in and said, "Hey, do you have a second?" She didn't look up. "Sure, what's up?" I was wondering what I should wear to the wedding. Heather hasn't really said anything about color or... She cut me off. And I mean cut. "Clara," she said, voice low but flat. "We all agreed you're not welcome at the wedding." First I thought it was a joke. My brain literally couldn't compute it. Like, what do you even say to that? I just blinked. "What do you mean?" She finally looked at me. "Heather's uncomfortable with you being there. Tyler too. It's just for the best." I felt the air go still. The dishwasher hummed. The clock ticked. A bird chirped outside like nothing had changed. But everything had. "Did I do something?" I asked, my voice cracking. She didn't answer right away. Just swirled the wine. "You've always made things complicated. You're emotional. You ask too many questions. You stir up things." "I exist," I said. "Is that the problem?" Mom's face didn't change. You'd think that moment would have turned into a screaming match or at least some kind of breakdown. But I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stood there, trying to process the cruelty disguised as calm. And that's when the feeling started creeping in. The one I hadn't let myself feel since I was a teenager. I don't belong here. The days after that were a blur. Heather didn't text me. Dad didn't say a word. Ethan was the only one who called, but all he said was, "I don't know what's going on, Clara, but I think you should just let it go." Let it go. They were getting dressed up for a wedding, and I was being exiled from my own family like a bad rumor. And no one even tried to explain why. But here's the thing they didn't know. I had a reason to stay quiet. Big one. Because if I told the truth, the real truth about why Heather didn't want me there, I might lose more than my seat at a wedding. I might lose someone I wasn't supposed to care about the way I did. And no, this isn't one of those cheap stories where sisters fight over a man. This was deeper, stranger, more unforgivable. The secret started 2 years ago. Summer evening. A bottle of red. And a look I was never supposed to return. But you'll understand soon. Maybe too soon. Because what happened after I was uninvited wasn't me fading into the background like they hoped. It was the beginning of everything I had buried, crawling back to the surface. And I swear, it all began with a single question I asked someone who should have never answered. Did you mean it that night? Or was it just the wine? And his answer, that changed everything. But I'll get to that soon. If you've ever been treated like the problem just for existing, if you've ever had your heart twisted in silence while everyone smiled around you, then stay with me. I need you here. I want you to hear the whole truth, even if they didn't want me to speak it. 'Cause someone out there is listening, right? If you're still here, let me know in the comments. Was I wrong to feel betrayed? Would you have walked away, or done what I did? And hey, don't just listen quietly. Subscribe if you're the kind of person who refuses to stay silent when the world tells you to disappear. This story is just getting started. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone like it might apologize on Heather's behalf. Like maybe someone, Dad, Ethan, even Mom, would suddenly text me and say, "It was a mistake. Come to the wedding. You belong with us." But no one did. The silence wasn't empty. It was deliberate, heavy. It said you've been erased. And the worst part, they were going through with it like I had never existed. Like all my childhood birthdays and sleepovers and kitchen table secrets with Heather meant nothing. I needed clarity, and I knew only one person could give it to me. So the next morning I did something reckless. I drove straight to Tyler's apartment. The same Tyler who was marrying my sister in 10 days. I had never been inside his place alone. Heather had always been there before. But I knew he'd be home. He worked remotely some days, and Heather had mentioned he had a few errands before wedding week kicked into full chaos. I didn't call or text. I just knocked. The look on his face when he opened the door. Shock, guilt, something else I couldn't place, but not surprise. "Clara," he said, pulling the door tighter like he might shut it again. Kept my voice steady. "Can we talk?" He hesitated, looked over his shoulder like someone might be watching, then slowly stepped aside. Inside it smelled like cedarwood and coffee. His place was spotless. Typical Tyler. I sat on the couch while he stayed standing, arms folded like a barrier. "This isn't a good idea," he said. "Was it ever?" That made him wince. He ran a hand through his hair. "Heather told you, didn't she?" "Not Heather. My mom." That surprised him. "She told you." She made it sound like it was unanimous. That everyone agreed I shouldn't be at the wedding. He nodded slowly. "I didn't want it to happen like this. But you wanted it to happen." Silence. And then I said it. The thing I had rehearsed in my head for over a year but never dared say aloud. "Did that night mean anything to you, Tyler? Or was it just wine and nerves?" He didn't answer right away. Just stared at me like I had said something dangerous out loud. But I had. It was nearly 2 years ago, one of those strange, perfect, painful nights. Heather had stormed out after a stupid fight about table manners, of all things, and left Tyler sitting in our family living room while I cleaned up. We started talking, laughing, drinking, and for one moment too long we looked at each other. Then he leaned in, and I let him. It was nothing explosive, just a kiss. A soft, cautious, "This shouldn't be happening" kind of kiss. He pulled away first, apologized, said it was a mistake, and we both pretended to forget it ever happened. But I didn't forget, and I don't think he did either. Now, standing across from me in his apartment, he finally said, "It meant something." Those 3 words felt like a confession and a curse all at once. Then why am I the one being punished? Asked standing. Why am I the villain in this story? He looked down. Because I proposed. 'Cause I moved on. Because Heather is the one I chose. I blinked back whatever emotion threatened to rise. Then why did you never tell her? He exhaled slowly. Because I knew if I did, she'd blame you. He was right. Heather would have burned me to the ground. Not him. Is that why I'm not invited? Yes. Because she knows somehow. He nodded slightly. She saw something in my phone months ago. She didn't confront me. She just decided to cut me out. To protect her image. Her idea of control. It made sense in the most painful way possible. Heather always played offense. And Mom. She followed her lead like a soldier. I thought maybe. I started then stopped. My voice broke anyway. I thought maybe you'd speak up. He shook his head. You know I can't. And there it was, the truth raw and brutal. He wouldn't risk it. He wouldn't risk her. He wouldn't risk us whatever we were. For the sake of a moment we both let happen. So I left. Not dramatically. Not with shouting or slammed doors. Just a quiet walk down the stairs of his building. My heart beat louder than my footsteps. The drive home was a blur. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt this hollow ache open wider in my chest, like something sacred had been stolen from me. And I let it go. When I pulled into my driveway, Ethan was sitting on the front porch. He stood up immediately when he saw my face. Clara, you okay? I tried to smile. Define okay. He walked with me toward the steps. Look, I don't know what happened between you and Heather. Or Tyler. Or Mom. But I do know this family's messed up. And you're not the problem. Blink. He continued. They made you the scapegoat because you feel things they don't want to face. It was probably the kindest thing anyone in my family had ever said to me. I sat down next to him, still in a daze. So what do I do now? He hesitated, then said, You show them who you are. Even if they look away. I don't know what made that moment stick in my mind more than the rest, but I think it was the shift. Like the ground underneath my whole identity cracked and something new wanted to push through. Maybe I wasn't the problem. Maybe I was just the mirror they didn't want to look into. But the wedding was still happening. And I had a choice to make. Stay quiet like I always had. Or make them look at what they'd buried. If you've ever been silenced by people who said they loved you. If you've ever had to carry someone else's shame just to keep the peace. Leave a comment. Tell me your story. And if you're the type of person who believes that some secrets deserve to be exposed, then this is the channel for you. Subscribe because things are about to get messy, and trust me, you're going to want front row seats. A few days after I left Tyler's apartment, I stopped checking my phone. There was no apology coming. Not from Heather. Not from Mom. Not even a "you okay?" From Dad. He was always good at pretending conflict didn't exist if he didn't see it directly. A master of peaceful ignorance. And I was tired of trying to matter to people who needed me to shrink so they could feel tall. But that doesn't mean I was done. It means I finally let the silence speak for me. I started with something small. I posted an old photo of me and Heather on Instagram. It was from junior year me in a hideous prom dress Heather had picked out, standing next to her in one of her many picture-perfect gowns. But the caption, "Before I became invisible." No tags. No drama. Just honesty. Within 20 minutes, my cousin Jenna DM'd me. "Is everything okay? Are you not going to the wedding?" I didn't reply. Then my college roommate Rachel messaged, I thought you were the maid of honor." And just like that, the narrative started slipping out of Heather's hands. Which is exactly what she hated most. By the next morning I had 4 missed calls from Mom. No voicemails, of course not, but the meaning was clear. I had broken the unspoken rule of our family. Don't make us look bad. But I wasn't trying to cause a scene. I just didn't want to be erased quietly. Then something happened that I wasn't expecting. I got a text. From Tyler's mom. We had met a few times, always politely, always on the fringe of family dinners or holiday events. She wasn't warm, but she wasn't cold either. So seeing her name light up on my screen that night felt strange. Her message was short. Can we talk? Not about Heather. About you. For a moment I considered ignoring it. But curiosity has always been my favorite weakness. We met the next morning at a tiny coffee shop near the edge of town. Neutral ground. She wore a gray coat and carried herself like someone who knew what it meant to hold secrets for a lifetime. When she saw me, she didn't smile, just gestured toward the booth. I didn't want to do this over the phone. I nodded, unsure of what this was. She didn't waste time. I'm not here to scold you, or to dig into what happened between you and Tyler. Frankly, I don't know and I don't want to. But I do know my son. And I know when he's hiding something important. I stayed quiet. She looked me dead in the eye. He's not happy. That stunned me more than anything. But he's marrying Heather. I know. Waited. She looked tired. Not physically, spiritually. I saw him last week. He looked like someone being led to a decision he never made. And when I asked him about it, he said, "It's easier this way." She sipped her tea slowly. So I asked him what wasn't easy. And Clara, your name came up. Froze. She noticed. Whatever happened between you two, I don't need details. But I needed you to know that someone sees you. And I swear I nearly cried right there in that stupid cafe. I wasn't looking for validation, but having it, even for a second, felt like a window cracking open in a sealed room. Before she left, she put her hand on mine and said, "Don't let people silence you just because they're louder. Especially not women like Heather." And just like that she was gone. But her words stayed. All day. All night. And by morning I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to crash the wedding. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at their table. I was going to tell the truth, my truth. But not in whispers. Not in journals or deleted notes or avoided conversations. I was going to say it in front of everyone. And ironically, Heather had already given me the perfect place to do it. See, before I was uninvited, I had been asked to record a toast video for the reception. Heather said it was a cute modern thing they were doing, video messages from guests since some family members couldn't make it in person. I'd filmed 1 week ago. I never sent it. But I still had the access link. And as far as I knew, no one had updated the upload folder. So that night I sat in front of my laptop, turned on the camera and hit record. I stared straight into the lens and said, "Hi Heather. Hi Tyler. Congratulations." My voice didn't shake. "I know you don't want me there. I know you've erased me from your perfect little version of this day. But I'm going to speak anyway, because I deserve to be heard, even if you don't clap at the end." I went on. I said everything I needed to say. Not angrily, not bitterly, but honestly. About how I spent years trying to be good enough. About how Heather's approval became a currency I never had enough of. About how silence was demanded in our family more than truth ever was. And finally I said this. "Tyler, you kissed me first. But I'm not holding that over you. I just want you to know I forgave you before you ever said sorry. That's the kind of love I grew up waiting for, and never got." I ended the video not with a threat, but with a wish. I hope you both find what you're pretending you already have. And if you ever want to find the truth again, I'll be living in it. Then I uploaded it, closed the laptop, and I felt lighter. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't sabotage. It was just liberation. I don't know what happened at the wedding. I didn't want to know. But something tells me the video played. Because a week later I got a voicemail. It was just breathing at first. Then a whisper. "Why couldn't you just stay quiet?" It was Heather. She didn't sound angry. She sounded broken. And suddenly everything changed again. Because maybe the real mystery wasn't why they didn't want me at the wedding. Maybe it was something else entirely. Something they all knew. That I had forgotten. Something buried deep in my childhood. And now it was waking up. If you've ever had a memory that didn't feel like yours until one day it hit you all at once, drop a comment. Have you ever suddenly remembered something you weren't supposed to? And if you're not just here for drama but for truth that cuts deep. 'Cause now, we're opening the box everyone told me never to touch. And what's inside? It could destroy what's left of my family. Or maybe, just maybe, save me from becoming like them. A week passed. No more voicemails. No angry text. No sudden knocks at the door. Just a strange, simmering silence that felt more like a calm before something ugly. I wasn't scared though. Felt ready. Ready to finally stop pretending that my family's version of love was normal. Ready to stop waiting for someone to come save me from it. But I wasn't ready for what came next. It started with a dusty cardboard box. One I hadn't seen in almost a decade. I was cleaning out the hall closet, trying to make room for a shelf I'd bought impulsively from Facebook Marketplace. Therapy shopping if you want the truth. I moved some folded linens, a busted fan, and behind all that, I saw it. The box was labeled in faded Sharpie. Clara, high school plus other. I sat down right there on the floor. Inside there were yearbooks, some old sketch pads, a dried corsage, and half-written letters to people I never sent. I smiled for a second, tracing the edges of who I used to be. Then, at the very bottom I saw something strange. A small black notebook, one I didn't recognize. It wasn't in my handwriting. Not mine. Not Heather's. Not even Mom's. The writing was blocky, careful, and neat. Opened it. Inside were dozens of short entries. Dated. Each one no more than a paragraph. But all of them were about me. Not just me, memories of me. Strange ones. June 18th. Clara said she saw someone standing at the foot of her bed again. She was crying. Told her it was just a dream. August 3rd. Clara said she remembers the Red Room again. We said it was just a story she made up. She's too old now to keep saying things like that. Red Room. Froze. 'Cause suddenly I remembered it. Not the whole thing. Just flashes. The smell of something sweet and wrong. Chair too big for me. A light bulb that flickered. And a hand holding mine too tightly. I slammed the notebook shut like I'd touched fire. That wasn't a normal memory. That was something they made me forget. I couldn't breathe. I grabbed my phone and called the one person who might know if what I was remembering was real. Ethan. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Clara," he said cautiously. "You okay?" I didn't even say hello. I jumped in. "Ethan, do you remember the Red Room?" Silence. Dead silence. Why are you asking about that? So it was real. My chest tightened. Because I just found something. Notebook. I think it was Dad's. He wrote stuff down about me. About things I used to say. Things I forgot. Ethan exhaled sharply. "Clara, where are you right now?" "At home." "Why?" "Listen to me. Don't go digging through that stuff alone, okay? That's not stuff we were supposed to find." My throat dried. What was it, Ethan? What happened to me? He was quiet again. Then he said something I didn't expect. "I remember the Red Room too." His voice cracked when he said it. And that's when I knew. We weren't just dealing with forgotten dreams or misremembered childhood nonsense. We were dealing with a secret. Shared one. Buried one. One that might explain everything. Including why I was pushed out of the wedding. Because what if my silence wasn't just about keeping Heather happy? What if it was about keeping me from remembering something I was never meant to tell? I spent that night curled on the couch, the notebook beside me, feeling like a ghost inside my own life. Every page was a breadcrumb trail to a version of myself they had tried to smother under politeness and shame. They called me emotional. They called me unstable. They called me dramatic. But maybe I was just too close to the truth. Maybe I had always been. And then the weirdest thing happened. At 2:17 a.m. my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. One sentence. "Stop looking, Clara." No punctuation. No name. Just that. I didn't sleep after that. And if you're wondering, no, I didn't go to the police. Not yet. Because I wasn't ready to explain that the threat wasn't just about danger. It was about memory and power, and the kind of secrets families build entire personalities around. If you've ever felt like your family molded your identity just to keep their lies safe. If you've ever remembered something dark years later that suddenly explained everything, tell me in the comments. You're not alone. And if this story is unlocking something in you, subscribe now. Because this part isn't just about what I found. It's about who else knew all along. And how far they were willing to go to make sure I never remembered. I didn't go outside for 3 days. Every time a car passed the window I flinched. Every vibration from my phone made my stomach tighten. That text, "Stop looking, Clara," had carved a hole in my safety. But it didn't stop me. If anything, it made me hungrier for the truth. I started digging. Carefully, quietly. I reread every page of the black notebook. Then I took photos of the entries and saved them in a locked folder. I wasn't sure who the original author was, Dad probably, but the way it tracked what I said, what I dreamed, what I feared. It felt obsessive and strategic, like someone was collecting data on a child who knew too much. Then I remembered something. One name that appeared twice in the notes, each time with a small underlined phrase. Dr. Langley, session notes withheld. Dr. Langley told him Clara's memory still unstable. I stared at those lines like they were written in fire. I had forgotten I'd ever been in therapy. But clearly someone made sure of that. So I did what I do best when I'm anxious and spiraling. I researched. I searched Greenville therapist records from the early 2000s. Clinics, practices, anything. And eventually I found him. Dr. Alan Langley. Private practice. Retired 3 years ago. Still living nearby. I don't know what possessed me, but I wrote him a letter. Not an email. A real pen-to-paper letter. Something about the old-school formality of it felt safer. Less traceable. I told him who I was. I told him I'd recently uncovered something related to my childhood. And I asked if he remembered me. I didn't expect him to reply. But he did. 3 days later I got an envelope in the mail. My name written in neat cursive. Inside was a typed response. Formal but laced with something I couldn't quite name. Dear Clara, I do remember you. I was surprised to receive your letter, but I appreciate the care in how you approached me. Yes, I worked with your family briefly, though my sessions were primarily with your parents. Asterisk, I am bound, as you understand, by confidentiality. But if you feel ready for a conversation, and if you are prepared to hear what I was never allowed to tell you, I would be willing to meet. With care. Dr. Alan Langley. Never allowed to tell me. My hands trembled as I read it again. So it wasn't just forgotten therapy. It was therapy done without my consent. Felt sick. I called Ethan that night. He answered sleepily. Clara. What is it? Do you remember me ever going to a therapist when we were kids? There was a long pause. Then, I thought it was for Mom. My throat tightened. It wasn't. Found proof. A letter from him. Dr. Langley. He said Mom and Dad controlled the sessions. Ethan's voice lowered. Why would they do that? I swallowed hard. To manage what I remembered. Silence. Then Ethan said something I will never forget. I think I need to tell you something. He paused. I don't remember everything, Clara. But I do remember once. Waking up in the middle of the night. You were standing in the hallway, whispering something. I couldn't hear it all. But you kept saying, don't let him take me again. My skin went cold. He went on. You were maybe 8 or 9. I thought it was just sleepwalking. But Mom was there too. She didn't comfort you. She just watched. That image burned into me like wildfire. My mother. Just watching. And suddenly I wasn't 8 years old anymore. I was a woman in her 20s, standing in the ruins of who she used to be, and realizing that her own family had built walls to keep her from herself. I emailed Dr. Langley the next morning. Told him I was ready. We met at a quiet coffee shop, tucked away behind a bookstore. He was older now. Gray at the temples. Glasses too big for his narrow face. But kind eyes. Still sharp. He didn't waste time. He placed a folder on the table. I can't give you copies, he said gently. But I can let you read a few things. Inside were session summaries. Most of them weren't about me. They were about my mother. Her instructions. Her rules. The way she insisted that certain memories not be acknowledged. How she was managing a fragile personality. And protecting Clara from false beliefs. How she had requested that any language suggesting abuse, exposure to trauma, or boundary violations be removed from reports. My jaw locked. She had rewritten my childhood like a novelist rewriting the draft of a thriller, cutting out anything too disturbing, too close to the truth. Dr. Langley looked at me gently. Clara, there was one memory you described. Over and over. I braced myself. You called it the Red Room. My stomach turned. He went on. You said it was where the rules changed. Where games weren't games anymore. Where adults stopped smiling. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. He continued. I tried to get your parents to approve trauma-focused work. They refused. They said it would damage the family. I sat in silence for a long time. Then I asked, do you think I made it up? He shook his head. I think you survived it. I left that meeting changed. No more uncertainty. No more pretending. I didn't have all the puzzle pieces yet, but the shape was forming. And it wasn't just about being uninvited to a wedding. It was about being banished from the story of my own life. So I did something bold. I printed copies of the notes I took from Dr. Langley's folder. I mailed them to Heather. No note. No warning. Just the pages. Because if she wanted to cut me out, she should at least know what she helped protect. The next night, at 11:43 p.m. I got a voicemail. Just one word. Whispered. Terrified. Clara. She hung up. And I knew. She remembered something too. If you've ever uncovered a truth your whole family swore wasn't real. If you've ever had the courage to pull the thread even when you knew it would unravel everything. Tell me in the comments. I want to hear from you. And if you believe that some family secrets don't need forgiveness, they need daylight, then subscribe. Because now I find out who else was part of it. And it's someone who sat at our dinner table every Sunday, smiling, pretending, waiting for me to forget. After Heather's voicemail, I didn't sleep. Not from fear. From confirmation. She remembered something. Something we were never supposed to talk about. Something that turned my questions from emotional instability into evidence. The next morning she called again. I let it ring. The fourth time I answered. I don't know what I expected. Tears, screaming, denial. But all I heard was silence at first. Then her voice, soft and flat. Why did you send me those notes? Took a breath. Because you were there. I thought it was a dream. So did I whispered. But trauma doesn't stay a dream forever. It finds its way through cracks. Through moments you don't expect. Smell. Phrase. A room you forgot existed. That was the Red Room for us. I remember him closing the door, she said, and her voice broke. So there it was. The person we hadn't said out loud. Not yet. But we both knew. Why didn't you ever tell me? Asked. Heather was quiet for a long time. Then, because Mom made me think it was my fault. Felt something shift. Like the foundation of every fight we'd ever had cracked open. Heather wasn't protecting Tyler by uninviting me from the wedding. She was protecting herself. Because my presence reminded her of what she'd buried. And maybe worse, who had helped bury it. Do you remember what he said? Asked. She didn't hesitate. He said, this is what love looks like when no one's watching. I nearly dropped the phone. 'Cause I remembered that exact phrase. Whispered in the dark. As a hand reached toward me. And that was the moment I knew. It wasn't just me. Heather hadn't just become cruel overnight. She had learned to control things because there was a time in her life when she couldn't control anything. We both had. Who else knows? Asked her. She exhaled hard. I think Ethan might. I think he always suspected. And Mom. Her voice turned sharp. She knew everything. She chose not to stop it. Closed my eyes. That hurt more than anything. Not the man. Not the memories. But the knowing that the one person who should have pulled me out left me there. I need to talk to him, I said. You mean? She trailed off. She couldn't say his name. So I did. Uncle David. Our mom's younger brother. The one who was always too helpful. Too affectionate. The one who took us for ice cream. Babysat us. Said things like, "Don't tell your mom, we're just having fun." The kind of man who hides in plain sight, right next to the potato salad at family picnics. Heather whispered. He's still coming to Sunday dinners. Did you know that? I didn't. But it didn't surprise me. Because men like that don't leave. They blend. And families like ours, we don't confront them. We set a place for them at the table. I hung up with Heather and called Ethan. Clara, he answered on the first ring. I've been waiting for you to call. I didn't even ask why. I just said, did he ever? No, he cut in, his voice firm. Not me. But I saw enough to know. Silence. Why didn't you say anything? Yes. He took a deep breath. 'Cause I was a kid. And because when I tried once, Mom told me I must have misunderstood. She made me apologize to him. I swallowed the rising bile in my throat. This was it. The entire family had been conditioned to protect a predator. And now that I was remembering, they were all scared. But I wasn't. Not anymore. I knew what I had to do. I drove to my mother's house. It was Sunday, which meant he would be there. When she opened the door, she gave me a smile so polished it could have cut glass. Clara, you're not on the guest list today, she said, light and sweet, like we were discussing brunch reservations. I didn't smile back. I'm not here for food. Her face flickered for a second. I stepped inside. She didn't stop me. I could hear voices in the kitchen. Laughter. Plates clinking. Then I saw him, Uncle David, sitting at the table, holding a cup of coffee like nothing had ever happened. He looked older, grayer, but not guilty, because guilt requires conscience. He looked up at me, mildly surprised. Clara, you're back. He said it like I had just come home from college. Like I was just being dramatic for missing a wedding. I walked toward him. Every part of me wanted to scream, to throw something, to call him a monster. But I didn't. I sat across from him and said loud and clear, I remember the Red Room. His smile faded instantly. I heard Mom inhale sharply behind me. Heather froze mid-step behind the kitchen counter. Uncle David put the cup down slowly. I don't know what you think you remember, Clara. You know exactly what I remember, I snapped. And so does she, I added, pointing at my mother. And so does Heather. The room fell into a suffocating silence. And then I added, I've spoken to Dr. Langley. I have notes. I have witnesses. And I have you on audio. He blinked. Lie, course. But he didn't know that. And for the first time in my life, he looked afraid. My mother said nothing. Not even a denial. 'Cause she knew too. I stood up. Next time you want to threaten me, I said softly, don't send it from a burner phone that still shows up in reverse lookup. You're not careful enough. That was a bluff too. But it worked. Uncle David's face turned gray. Heather looked like she was about to throw up. I turned to my mother one last time. I'm not going to carry your shame anymore. If you want to keep protecting him, you'll go down with him. And then I walked out. That night I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt clean for the first time in years. Because the truth. It wasn't going to stay buried in that Red Room anymore. And if that meant blowing up the family, so be it. If you've ever walked into a room full of people who chose to protect a lie over your pain, if you've ever stared your abuser in the eye and walked out whole, tell me in the comments. I'll believe you. And if you know that real healing only begins because in this, someone from the past reaches out with proof, and what they reveal might finally bring this entire house of lies down. I thought the hardest part would be confronting him. Uncle David. The Red Room. My mother's silence. But I was wrong. The hardest part was what came after. The day after I showed up at Sunday dinner, Heather sent me one more text. Thank you for saying it out loud. I couldn't. That's all it said. It didn't erase what she'd done. Didn't make me trust her again. But it did something I never expected. Made me feel less alone. And maybe that was the beginning of something new between us. Maybe. But then, something arrived that changed everything. Letter. No return address. Mailed directly to my door. Inside was a USB drive and a folded note. The handwriting was unfamiliar. Shaky, rushed. You don't know me. But I knew your father. I knew what he was trying to protect you from. He wasn't perfect, but he wasn't blind. This was sent to me in 2009. I think it's time you saw it. That was it. No name. No explanation. I didn't know what I was about to see. But my hands shook as I plugged the USB into my laptop. There was only one file. Video. Timestamped. July 14, 2009. I was 11. The footage was grainy, but I recognized the setting immediately. Our family's old basement. The one Dad always kept locked. Press play. The video started with static. Then I heard it. My voice. Faint. Quiet. Dad, is this on? Yes, his voice replied. Tell me again what you saw. I watched, horrified, as 11-year-old me sat in a yellow beanbag chair, hugging a stuffed giraffe, talking into the camera like it was a diary. He told me not to tell. He said Mom would be mad. That it was our secret room. But I don't like it. Smells weird. And he said I had to pretend it was a game. I felt my heart cracking open. Dad asked gently, "Who said that?" "Uncle David." The rest was blurry. Few more details. Nothing graphic. Just the unmistakable horror of a child trying to be brave enough to remember. And then the final line that stopped me cold. "You said I'm not supposed to cry on camera. But I want to, Dad." I slammed the laptop shut. Because I was crying now. Not for the girl on the screen. For the man behind the camera. My dad. The one I thought had abandoned me. But what if he hadn't? What if he was the only one who tried? I opened the folded note again. On the back, scribbled in the corner, were two more words. Ask Aunt Rose. I hadn't thought about her in years. Dad's older sister. The one who stopped coming to holidays. Who moved away after a fight no one ever explained. I dug through old emails, eventually found a contact saved from years ago, and sent her a message. Did Dad ever talk to you about the Red Room? She replied an hour later. He sent me the video. I begged him to go public. But your mother threatened him. Said she'd take you both down if he exposed the family. He sent the drive to me just in case something ever happened to him. My heart dropped. He wanted you to have it when you were ready. The next day I met Aunt Rose for coffee. She hugged me like I was made of glass. Then she told me the story. How Dad had once walked in on David taking me out to the garage in the middle of the night. How I was half asleep. How Dad told Mom. And how she refused to believe it. How he tried to leave. Tried to take me. But she threatened custody. Said she'd call him unstable. Said she'd make sure no one ever believed him. And so, he stayed. Until one day he didn't. His death had always felt wrong. It was labeled an accident. A fall during a solo hiking trip. But Aunt Rose. She didn't believe that. And now. Neither did I. My father didn't leave me. He fought for me. He documented it. And then, when no one would listen, he died trying to protect a secret that everyone else was trying to protect for the wrong reasons. I don't know how long I sat with that truth. But when I got home that night, I opened my laptop and rewatched the video. All of it. This time I didn't cry. Took notes. And then I called a lawyer. It was time to stop holding shame like it was mine. I told Heather. Told Ethan. Told Aunt Rose I was moving forward. And then, told Mom. Face to face. I showed her the video. Her reaction. Blank. Cold. Like a statue learning its own crimes. She didn't speak. But when I stood to leave, she said just one thing. "You'll ruin this family." I looked her dead in the eyes and replied, "You already did. Now the legal process begins. And someone is about to take the stand who never thought they'd speak again." The thing about truth is, it doesn't knock politely. Kicks the door in. And once it's in, there's no shoving it back into the dark. That week I filed the first official report. I brought the USB, the transcript, timeline, and gave them every piece. The officer who took my statement was kind, but I could see it in her face. The way she glanced at the timestamp, at my trembling hands, at the way I spoke like someone who had practiced this moment in her head for years. 'Cause I had. She didn't treat me like I was making it up. She treated me like I was one of many. And somehow that hurt even more. By the time I walked out of the police station, my hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady and ready. That same night I posted a video. Not for revenge. Not to go viral. But to reclaim something. It was simple. Just me sitting on my couch. My name is Clara. I'm 26. When I was 11, my uncle abused me. My family knew. They didn't stop him. They called me unstable, emotional, dramatic. But I was none of those things. I was a child who remembered. I told the world about the Red Room. About the notebook. About the USB. About the sister who remembered too late. And the father who died trying to protect me. I didn't name names, not yet. But I didn't whisper either. I told the truth. And by morning something strange happened. The views were growing fast. Not in a viral way. In a community way. Women started messaging me. Meant to. I had a red room. My mother said I was imagining things too. My uncle used to say the same words. I thought I was the only one. I read every comment, every DM, every story. And I realized something I hadn't let myself believe until then. This was bigger than just me. And I wasn't just telling a story. I was breaking a pattern. But not everyone liked that. The backlash came fast. Anonymous emails. Block calls. A private Facebook group created by concerned community members. Saying I was making up lies to destroy a good man's life. Someone even emailed my job. Thankfully, I had already talked to my manager. She stood by me. But the smear campaign, it was real. And in the middle of all of that I got a call. From the detective assigned to the case. "Clara," she said. "We've located another former victim. She never filed, but she's ready to speak." My heart stopped. Another girl. Another survivor. She was 32 now. Her name was Naomi. She had lived 2 blocks over from us growing up. Her mother used to babysit me when Mom was working. And yes, Uncle David had been friendly with their family too. Naomi met me at a park. We sat across from each other on a bench like we'd known each other our whole lives. And maybe, in some twisted way, we had. "I used to think I imagined it," she said, hands knotted in her lap. "He told me it was a dream. That I made it up. And I believed him, until I saw your video." She had been 6. And she remembered the Red Room too. But she didn't call it that. She called it the sad room. Because it made her feel like crying even when nothing happened inside it. Naomi agreed to give a statement. And suddenly, we weren't just survivors anymore. We were witnesses. That changed everything. The DA got involved. A grand jury was discussed. And word spread, faster than I could control it. Which is how it reached Mom. Got a letter from her. No return address. Just a plain white envelope shoved into my mailbox. The letter said only this. "I hope you're happy. Your father would be ashamed of what you're doing. Our family was never perfect, but you've burned it to the ground. Don't come back here again." No signature. Just venom. I read it 3 times. Then I ripped it in half. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. Felt free. Because you don't owe your silence to people who built their comfort on your pain. And if that makes me disloyal, then good. I never wanted loyalty to rot to begin with. But the real surprise came a week later. The detective called again. "Clara, We've confirmed your father's final voicemail. The one he left for your aunt. Pause. We believe his death wasn't an accident. The wind was knocked out of me. What are you saying? There's evidence to suggest he was being followed. We're reopening that investigation as well. Unofficially for now. But stay alert. I hung up and sat in silence. Because everything was unraveling. The red room. The silence. The erasure. Even his death. And still I wasn't done. Because in part 9, someone knocks on my door. Someone who has stayed quiet for years. But now, they're ready to talk. And what they bring with them could destroy what's left of my mother's reputation. And expose exactly what she was protecting all along. If you've ever chosen truth over family. If you've ever stood up when staying silent would have been easier. Tell me in the comments. I'm listening. Always. And if you're here for justice, healing and raw honesty. Because this story isn't just a confession anymore. It's a reckoning. The knock came at 6:04 p.m. I hadn't ordered food. Wasn't expecting company. I just finished deleting another hateful message calling me attention-hungry trash when I heard it. 2 knocks. Low. Firm. Familiar. When I opened the door I froze. It was Grandma. I hadn't seen her in years. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her silver hair tied back neatly. Her lips pressed into a line she'd probably kept for most of her life. "Can I come in?" she asked, voice brittle. I didn't answer. Just stepped aside. She walked slowly into my apartment like she was crossing a minefield. I shut the door behind her. "Mom sent you?" I asked flatly. She turned, met my eyes, and for the first time ever, I saw something fragile behind them. "No," she said. "I came for me." We sat across from each other in the living room. She looked around, at the soft blanket draped over the couch, the tiny lavender candle flickering on the table, and I could feel her judging, cataloging, trying to stay in control. Then she sighed. "I watched your video," she said softly. "The one about the red room." I said nothing. She continued. "Your mother told me you were exaggerating. That you'd lost your mind. But I've known better for a long time." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" She looked down. Her fingers trembled slightly. "I caught David once. You were 6. I walked in and he jumped like I'd slapped him. You were half asleep on the floor." My breath hitched. I asked what was going on. "He said you'd gotten scared and wandered in while he was down there fixing something." And blinked. "You believed him." She hesitated. "I wanted to. But I didn't." "Then why didn't you say anything?" I whispered. Her answer came slow, like her bones didn't want her to say it. "Because I didn't stop him when it happened to your mother either." The room felt like it cracked open. "What?" She nodded. "Your mother. She was 8. He was 15. I was young, alone, overwhelmed. And I told myself it would ruin the family if I made a scene. So I sent him away to live with our cousin for a while and told everyone he had discipline issues." Felt sick. She swallowed, forcing herself to go on. "When your mother got older, she swore she forgot, or chose to. And when she saw signs in you," her voice faltered, "she didn't want it to be real again. Because if it was, then she'd have to face what I let happen to her." I couldn't speak. I didn't know which hurt more. That Uncle David had been a predator his whole life, or that everyone knew and still passed me through his hands like a secret too inconvenient to name. "She told me she was going to handle it," Grandma said. "But handling it meant covering it, erasing it, blaming you. Why are you telling me this now?" I whispered. She looked at me with tear-filled eyes. "Because the truth outlives shame. And you were never the one who should have carried any of this." For the first time in decades, my grandmother was crying. And I was silent, not out of fear but out of exhaustion. "I still have the letters," she added. "From your dad. He wrote me when your mother refused to leave with him. Said he was afraid for you. That David had started visiting again. That your mother said it was just his imagination." My throat burned. "You had letters from Dad. And you didn't tell me? She nodded slowly. I thought I was protecting you. But really, I was protecting myself from having to admit I was part of this. That my silence started this entire pattern. She pulled an envelope from her purse. Inside, 7 handwritten letters. Dates going back years. All written by my father. All detailing moments, concerns, memories. All begging someone, anyone, to help him protect me. I read one. Just one. It said, "She woke up screaming last night." Said, "The red room smells like syrup again." I know what she means. I remember the syrup too. I can't believe I let this happen again. But I won't lose her, Rose. Not to him. Not to her silence. I couldn't breathe. The smell. The one I couldn't place as a kid. That sickly sweet, rotting sugar scent in the red room. It was real. I looked up at Grandma. I want him arrested. I want this on the record. I want everyone to know. Her lips trembled. Then I'll testify. Blinked. What? I'll testify. Against David. Against your mother if I have to. You shouldn't have to carry this alone anymore. For a long time, neither of us said anything. And then she reached across the table and held my hand. I'm sorry I didn't do it 20 years ago, she whispered. I said nothing. Because sorry wasn't enough. But it was a start. And sometimes, that's the best you get from the generation that taught itself survival over truth. That night I scanned the letters, sent them to my lawyer, and called the detective. We had a witness now. One who had lived through the first silence. And she was finally ready to break it. Now the court process begins. The trial date is set. And one of the people I thought I'd never hear from again shows up on the other side. I always thought courtrooms would feel like justice, like safety. But when I walked into that building with my lawyer, stomach knotted, palms slick, it didn't feel like justice. Felt like war. The hallway buzzed with people. Some strangers, some familiar in that terrible, don't look too long kind of way. I saw Heather first. She didn't wave. Didn't smile. But she stood. She was wearing black. No jewelry. Just a pin Dad had given us when we were kids. 2 stars crossing paths. It was her way of saying, I'm here. I'm with you. We sat in silence together, knees almost touching, until the door opened. David Hastings. The clerk called out. And there he was, Uncle David. He walked into that courtroom like he was attending a retirement party. Smooth, confident, smiling, as if none of it mattered. He even looked at me. That soft, smug look like I was still a little girl in the red room. But I didn't look away. Not this time. He was being arraigned that day. Not yet tried. But the charges were heavy. Sexual assault of a minor. Child endangerment. Conspiracy to conceal evidence. The new additions. Obstruction of justice. Tampering with medical testimony. Those came because of the letters. Because of the witnesses. Because of Grandma. She testified in a sealed session, with tears in her voice and shaking hands. But she told the truth. So did Naomi. So did I. We laid it all bare. And when it came time for his defense attorney to speak, she did what I expected. She painted me as a troubled young woman seeking attention. Said I was capitalizing on the cultural trend of survivor stories. Even claimed my father's letters were emotional venting, not fact. But the judge, he didn't flinch. And when the court read the motion to proceed with a full trial, I felt something in me loosen. Like a chain that had been on my ribs since childhood had finally snapped. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. I said nothing. But Heather, sweet, wounded, once cold Heather, stepped forward and said the words I couldn't. My sister's not seeking attention. She's seeking accountability. And it's long overdue. I almost broke down right there. Later that night I got a message from Ethan. Photo of our childhood dog. Memory. And beneath it, just this. Dad would be proud of you. Even if it took us too long to get here. I stared at that message for hours. Because somewhere in all of this, between lawyers and trauma and guilt, I'd forgotten why I started. It wasn't to destroy anyone. It was to set myself free. But the universe wasn't done yet. Because the next day I got a call from my lawyer. "There's someone else who's filed to be part of the case," she said cautiously. "As a witness. But you might want to sit down before I tell you." My heart sank. "Who?" There was a pause. "Your mother." Blinked. "As what?" "A witness for us. She's not clear yet. But she's filed a statement. She says she has something to confess. Something she withheld." I couldn't speak. Not because I didn't expect it. But because I never expected it. My mother, the woman who wrote me off, sent letters dripping with venom, who sat beside my abuser for years and pretended not to notice. Now, suddenly, she had something to say. And part of me wanted to believe it was redemption. But another part, the part that had been locked in the Red Room, knew better. This wasn't an apology. It was self-preservation. "She'll be appearing at the pre-trial hearing," my lawyer added. "You don't have to face her unless you want to." I sat still. Then finally I said, "I'll be there." Because this time, I wanted to look her in the eyes. And ask her, why? Why did she choose silence? Why did she let Dad fight alone? Why did she invite my abuser to dinner while I sat across from him, shaking? If you've ever had to face the person who betrayed you while pretending they were protecting you, if you've ever been torn between closure and confrontation, tell me in the comments. I'll read every word. Because in final part, I finally hear her side of the story. And what my mother says changes everything. Not just what happened, but why it happened. The courtroom felt colder that day. Not because of the AC, but because of who was sitting behind the witness barrier. My mother. She looked smaller than I remembered. Hair perfectly done. Makeup soft. But her eyes were hollow. When they called her name, the room held its breath. Heather didn't look at her. Ethan didn't either. Even Grandma stared at the floor. I didn't know what she was about to say. But I knew. It would either break something open, or break me all over again. She raised her right hand, took the oath, and then, she began. "I'm here today," she said, voice calm and measured, "because I have kept secrets that should have never been mine to keep. No emotion. Not yet. Just control. Like always. I knew about David," she said. "Not just because of what Clara told me, but because I was the first one he hurt." A gasp rippled through the room. Even I froze. She kept talking. "When I was a child, my mother found us. She didn't ask questions. Just sent him away. Told me to forget. And I did. I convinced myself it never happened. My heart dropped. I grew up. Had my own children. And when Clara started waking up with night terrors, I knew." She looked directly at me now. And I chose not to believe her. Not because I thought she was lying, but because if I believed her, I'd have to believe it happened to me too. Again. Felt sick. And seen. And furious. She continued, voice shaking now. "I told my husband to stop pushing. I threatened him. I told him he was overreacting. But I knew. Deep down I always knew." She held up a trembling hand. "I am not here to ask for forgiveness. I am here to testify that everything Clara said is true. And that I enabled it. That I covered for it. And that I will carry that guilt until the day I die." She broke then. Right there in front of everyone. And for the first time in my life, I saw my mother cry. Not for control. Not for appearances. But for everything we lost because she didn't speak. When she stepped down, she didn't look at me. But she whispered as she passed. "You were never crazy. You were never wrong. And you were always stronger than me." I didn't respond. I didn't know if I ever would. But I felt something loosen. Like the story I had carried alone had finally been passed into someone else's hands. The trial continued. David pled not guilty. His lawyer tried to discredit every witness. But the letters, the video, the statements, the medical records, the years of silence that finally cracked wide open, they spoke louder than anything he could say. And the verdict, guilty, On all counts. When the judge read it, I didn't cry. I just sat there. Oh. And then I left. Not with relief. Not exactly. But with something closer to peace. Heather met me outside. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know," I replied. We hugged. And it wasn't perfect. But it was real. Later that night I went home. Lit a candle for Dad. Held one of his old letters to my chest. And whispered, "We made it." If you've been through the kind of silence that cuts deeper than any scream, if your truth was ignored, buried, or twisted into something you could barely recognize, tell me in the comments. Let it out. I'll hold space for you. And listen. If you're grown, really grown, if you've seen what betrayal looks like behind a polite smile, if you understand that real revenge isn't about violence, it's about truth that refuses to be silenced, then subscribe. Right now. Because this story, it's just the beginning. The ones I'm about to tell next, they'll make this look like a whisper. Only those who are strong enough to hear them should stay. If that's you, welcome. You're exactly where you need to be.